ability to see things. I'll give you an example of something that happened to us. Besides more than one thing, many things happened. We once had a situation with one of our children that she wasn't feeling well. Talking about a little baby, not even a year old. We went to a doctor. There was an office here on Albany Avenue. He examined her, and the top of the head by a baby is supposed to be soft. It was very tense. And the doctor said this is a sign of, God forbid, an infection. Could even be meningitis. So he was panicking. And he told us to go straight to the hospital. He's going to make an arrangement, and they're going to do a test called a spinal test, which means they put a pin into the spine and they check the fluid. I'm not sure the details. Anyway, we were a little bit uncomfortable with that. My wife especially was not a little baby, the spinal. So we asked the Rebbe if we should, wrote in that it's an emergency. Should we see another doctor? The Rebbe said, yeah. Went to a second doctor. The doctor looked at the baby. Everything's fine. We didn't tell him initially why we're here. How's the baby? A little bit cranky. Okay, looks, everything's fine. They said, what about, isn't this tense? Touches it. Everything's fine. I don't know. Just change the diet a little bit, Anyway, but now we have a dilemma. Not only that, the doctor lived around the corner from our house on Albany and Eastern Parkway. When we got home, we found out that the nurse already came to our house looking for us. What are these idiots? The baby needs to go to the hospital immediately. They must do this spinal test. It's not a simple thing. This could be, God forbid, very dangerous. So we wrote to them, what should we do? The first doctor is panicking and said, we must do it. The second doctor says everything is okay. And the Rebbe answered to follow the opinion of the second doctor. Needless to say, yeah, everything is okay. The only thing that wasn't okay is that the first doctor would never see us again. That's it. He expelled us from his office. But how could a person answer such a question? Imagine someone comes to you and says, one doctor says this, and the other doctor says, it's not a big deal. And you would say, who could say, don't go or do go? Either way, it's a danger. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not looking at medical. The Rebbe just heard a report from two hysterical parents, didn't see a medical report, didn't speak to a doctor, didn't look at anything. And to answer such a question, the only way you can do that is if you can see and know things that an ordinary person wouldn't know. And these are the kind of stories that happen all the time, on an ongoing basis. But he would sometimes say, follow the opinion of the second doctor, or sometimes he would say, ask a third doctor, which means it was all in a way that it made sense logically. Never did he say, I'm telling you something now, because I know this from a higher source, never said it. The only exception was Moshiach. And there's a reason for that, which we'll see a little bit later. But first, let's go into the discussion. Some people are by the opinion that after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, there can't be prophecy. There are sources. There is no prophecy today. So let's go look at the sources, and then we'll see what this is based on. So first of all, the first page here is from a pasuk in Tanakh. One of the promises about the future are these words: I will restore your judges as at first, and your counselors as in the beginning. It's a verse which is talking about one of the promises, what will happen when Mashiach comes. Judges, we know what that means. The Jewish people had the merit of having a Sanhedrin. This was a court of rabbis of 71 rabbis, and they were the judges of the whole Jewish nation. They were the greatest Torah sages. Any question in Torah, they would be the ones to study it and work it out and come and make a decision. And this was the rule and the law for all of Yidden. We don't have that anymore. Mashiach comes, once again, we'll have the Sanhedrin. What does it mean, your counselors? Your people that you can consult with, they give you advice. It's either translated as counselors or advisors. So there are different interpretations of what it means. But because of this verse, we also say this in davening. Turn to the next page. This is part of the Shemona Esrei. We're asking for something which is the fulfillment of these words. What does it say? Restore our judges like in the early times, and our advisors like in the olden times. So because it says here that that's what Hashem will do when Mashiach comes. So what are advisors? This is a little bit difficult to go into the details, but the Rebbe shows that one of the ways of understanding advisors means prophets. Hashem will bring back judges like it used to be, or bring back prophets like it used to be. But here's some of the sources. Page number 3. What you're looking at is Gemara. This is the Talmud. And here it says the following, the part that's underlined. Rav Avdimi from Haifa said, from the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the temple was destroyed, the power of prophecy was taken away from the prophets and given to the sages. So it says that the power of prophecy was taken away from the prophets. On the other hand, it also says it was given to the sages. So what does that mean? The Gemara asks, isn't it really true that does that mean that the sages were not prophets? The sages were also prophets. So here's what it answers. It means to say, when the temple was destroyed, although prophecy was taken away from prophets who were not sages, but it wasn't taken away from the sages. They retained their prophetic power even after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And the way it's explained is that there's 2 ways a prophecy can occur, and we'll soon see inside, because prophecy is one of the 13 basic principles of Jewish belief. If a person has a weakness in believing in prophets, really they're not believing in the whole Torah, because the whole Torah is based on prophecies, all the prophecies of Moshe Rabbeinu. And all the books of the prophets, everything is based on prophets. Shmuel was a prophet, and Yeshayahu was a prophet, and Yirmiyahu was a prophet, and Yehoshua was a prophet. They're all prophets. If Chas v'Shalom, a person said, I don't believe in that, it means you don't believe in the whole Torah. So it's one of the basic principles of belief, and therefore we're going to learn a little bit in the Rambam, Maimonides, which is a book of halacha, where it talks about prophecy. But what is the difference between sages and prophets? Yes, Shirley.
We are asking in the Amida for the prophets to come back.
In Shmon Esrei? Yeah.
But we have the Rebbe as a prophet.
Well, I'll soon get to that question.
So
I'll soon get that question. Hold on. If I forget, you'll remind me. We'll get in a second. So generally speaking, prophecy for a prophet took place. There was a whole process how it happened, which we'll soon learn about in the Rambam. But then there's another form of prophecy, and that is, it's a prophecy that's channeled through the intellect of one of the sages. In other words, a sage, let's say Rabbi Akiva, the great tzaddikim that wrote the Talmud and the Gemara, they use their mind and their intellect just like we do. And they were giants, intellectual giants, and therefore they understood things on a very deep level. However, not only did they have the advantage that they were giant as intellects, but Hashem's sort of spirit guided them in everything that they thought, that came to their mind, and therefore that itself was also prophetic. And they had the ability to see things that are going to happen in the future and so on. So even this source that says that once the temple was destroyed, there's no longer prophecy, what does it say? But the sages do have prophetic power. Then there's another thing on page 4. Rabbi Yochanan says, the part that's underlined, from the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the reason why they keep saying from the day the temple was destroyed, because once the temple was destroyed, the presence of Hashem in this world is no longer the same. And being that it's no longer the same, therefore, it's harder to reach such a high level of spirituality to be a prophet. But it says an interesting thing, that nevertheless, it was given to fools and to children. So the Gemara said, what does that mean it was given to fools? And the Gemara gives an example. Basically, it doesn't mean that people are chas v'shalom mentally not well are on a high level. They're not well. It means that sometimes a person, even a child, that says something randomly, and even a person who's not well and he says things randomly, It could be that Hashem is sending through their mouths some sort of a prophetic message. To give you an example, I don't know if Mrs. Prostin came to this, but in the story of Purim, there is such a part of the story. That Haman came out with a decree. Mordechai was devastated. And the first thing he did was he stopped 3 children coming from the school. Anyone remember that Mrs. Prostin talk about it yet? She'll get there.
We're getting there this week.
Oh, how do you know? Prophet, okay. A prophetess in our midst. So the story is that he asked one child, tell me, what did you learn today in school? And the child quoted the pasuk from davening. Don't be afraid of something that might instill fear in you. And then he asked another child, what did you learn today? And he said the second verse, which says, there are those that think of all sorts of plans and schemes against us, but Hashem will make sure it wouldn't happen. And then the third child. These are the 3 verses we say after Aleinu every day. And when he heard that, he got very excited, he's very happy. And the Haman got very upset. But what was it? What he heard was a prophecy that these children, what came out of their mouths was Hashem sending a prophetic message. Don't be afraid. You'll see that ultimately this will work out. So again, but here it does appear to be that we don't have any more people that are like sages or great people that are prophets. So what is the basis to say there is prophecy today? The strongest basis is Rambam. Rambam is a book of halacha. And if you remember, we said, when we talk about the subject of Mashiach, one of the reasons why we specifically wanted to learn Rambam on Mashiach is because everything it says about Mashiach in the Talmud, and everything it says about Mashiach in the books of the prophets, and everything it says about Mashiach in the Medrash, all these sources, it's not clear whether it's to be taken literally or it's a metaphor. But anything that's written in the Rambam, because it's a book of halacha, it's clearly literal. Because halacha, everything is literal. If you see something in the code of Jewish law, it says to do this or not to do this, it's not a metaphor. It's always literal, speaking on the literal level. So therefore, Rambam is halacha, and he talks about prophecy, and he actually talks about conditions. When there could be prophecy, where there could be prophecy, how there could be prophecy, but he does not give any condition that prophecy cannot be after the destruction of the temple. In fact, he lived in that time. He lived only 800 years ago. In all his conditions and criteria, there should have been that when the temple is destroyed, there can't be prophecy. And that's one of the sources that commentary on Rambam say, based on that, it's clear that the Rambam is saying as a halacha, prophecy can be even after the Beis HaMikdash. It's in all generations it can be prophecy. So surely that's a good question. If there's always prophecy, then why are we asking Hashem bring back prophecy? And what are there sources that say there is no longer prophecy? So the answer is like this. That, first of all, there are many sources that of people who live much later than the temple, and yet open sources where they clearly had prophecy and they prophesied and so on and so forth. So what it means is as follows. In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, there were many people who were great sages, and there were many people who reached the level of becoming a prophet. In the Gemara, it raises the question, how many prophets lived throughout the different years? And there are 2 opinions. One opinion says the same amount of people that went out of Mitzrayim. How much is that? 600,000. The other opinion says twice that amount, 1,200,000, 1,200,000 people. But if you look at the list over here of the prophets, you can count them on your fingers. Yeah, there are more names than this, and the names altogether add up to 48. And here the Gemara says 600,000, 1,200,000. What is the difference? The difference is there were a lot of prophets, and the prophets prophesied. But first of all, some of the prophets, when they prophesied, it was just they themselves, for their own personal spiritual growth and spiritual reaching higher heights, use prophecy to read and understand and perceive things on a spiritual plane. Then there were those who were sent by Hashem to give messages to communities, to people, different times. All that is not recorded anywhere. Only those people, those prophecies, which have it in a message, not only for them, but it's a message forever, for all times, those are the things that are written down in the books of the prophets. So that's why we know these names, because they were the ones who were sent to give prophetic messages, and these messages are for Jews to learn and know all generations until Mashiach comes, and after Mashiach comes, it's eternal. All the other million prophets, the great tzaddikim, but their messages were not meant to be eternal. It was for that generation, for that year, for that time, for that community, but not for all of Israel. So that means there's another difference. Even though there are prophets today, but in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, it was very common. Imagine if there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of prophets, means there were a lot of people in the generation that were prophets. Today, we don't have it as common as it used to be. So there are a few, but there's still in every generation, there are people that are Nevi'im, that are prophets. Understand the difference? So when we say Hashem restore the way it used to be, means bring it back to the way it used to be, that prophecy is something which is in abundance. So everybody in fact, when Mashiach comes, will reach the level of prophecy. So because it's so essential, I want to take you on a little journey here in the Rambam, where he talks about prophecy and describes it a little bit. Because there are a lot of questions. How do I know that somebody's really a prophet? What if someone walks into the room and says, Shalom Aleichem, my name is Yankel the prophet. Whatever I tell you, you have to do. It's a message from Hashem. Yeah, prove it. Where's your ID? How do I know? So let's take a look what the Rambam says. So that's page 5 in the booklet. One of the foundations of our faith is that God communicates by prophecy with man. But prophecy is bestowed only upon a very wise sage of strong character. Strong character doesn't mean that he can beat up other people. It means strong character, a person that's totally, he explains the next word, who is never overcome by his natural inclination in any regard. He's totally in control of himself. Like the Alter Rebbe describes in Tanya, a person who is in control of his thought, speech, and action. Instead, with his mind, he overcomes his natural inclinations at all times. So first of all, he's a tzaddik. He's a person who never violates Torah, never gives in to his Yetzer Hara. He must also possess a broad and correct perspective, meaning broad knowledge of Hashem and Torah and so on. So anyone who doesn't have these qualities says, I'm a prophet, not according to Torah, no way. In order to become a prophet, you have to be at a very high level of spirituality. I remember I once had a conversation with someone. He happened to walk into 770. This goes back many years ago. And he tells me that he believed in a certain religion. Not only that, he's actually the one who created the religion. I started to have a conversation with him. He sounded very intelligent. He asked me a question, I give him an answer. I asked him a question. Finally came to a point where he had no answers to my questions. So I say, well, if you have no answers, you have to give up on your religion because you can't support it. You don't have answers to my question. He says, no, I know it's true. So I say, if I would say that, I can say, I don't know the answer, but all the great sages that lived before me, they know the answer. But what's your excuse? You're the one who created it. And if you have no answers, you have to be honest and just drop it. No, I know it's true. How do you know it's true? Finally he says, God himself told me. That's when I said, okay, nice day. No more point in having a conversation. But God doesn't just appear and give prophecy to anybody. It has to be on a very high level. You have to be fit for prophecy.
Question,
yes.
What about those people that are like a little bit clairvoyant or they can see the future? We're not supposed to channel that. We're supposed to...
No, people could also see the future in a way, not because they have excess spiritual holy power, but they have excess impure power. And that's why we're not allowed to do it. And the Torah talks about that you're not allowed to go to people who look into the future. Witchcraft is something which is prohibited. sorcery. These are people who don't have access to something which is powerful, supernatural, but it's in a negative way. That's why, generally speaking, when you think of these people, it's always people that are evil. And when you say the word witch, you don't imagine a tzaddik. The word witch is usually, what's a witch? A person who uses sorcery. What do they usually use it for? In an evil way, because it's an evil force.
So this kind of prophecy is not really the prophecy we're speaking about. It's not that insight.
Right, this is Kedusha. This is something which is holy. I mean, for a person to say that he's not a tzaddik and is not spiritually on a high level and has prophecy is like saying, I don't need the GPS. I can just look at this cup and I'll figure out how to travel. Happy travels. It's not designed to pick up any signals. How is this going to pick up signals? A GPS is something which is designed brilliantly by brilliant people, the technology, put it together in a way that it can pick up signals, but not anything can pick up signal. Yes, a stapler is a very good thing to make staples, but it's not going to pick up signals. It has to be designed. So what's the design to pick up signals from Hashem to be spiritually pure and complete? A person who is full of these qualities and is physically sound, this person is fit for prophecy. When he enters the Pardes, Pardes literally actually means a orchard. An orchard is a place where there's beautiful fruits growing, and you see beautiful colors, you feel a beautiful scent in the air, but it's used as a metaphor for Kabbalah. And Pardes means to enter a very deep place of studying spirituality. So this person, when he enters, drawn into these great and sublime concepts, if he possesses a correct perspective to comprehend and grasp them, he will become holy. He will advance and separate himself from the masses who proceed in the darkness of time, which means he'll be entering a different world completely. He must continue and diligently train himself not to have any thoughts whatsoever about fruitless things or the vanities and intrigues of the times. And he's totally connected just to holiness and godliness. Instead, his mind should constantly be directed upward, bound beneath Hashem's throne of glory, striving to comprehend the holy and pure forms and gazing at the wisdom of the Holy One, blessed be He, in its entirety. And he thinks about it from the most elevated spiritual form until the navel of the earth, appreciating its greatness. After these preparations that he's ready in, he's sort of in depth involved in understanding all these spiritual things, the spirit of prophecy will immediately rest upon him. Let's keep going, next page. When the spirit rests upon him, his soul becomes intermingled with angels, which are called Ishim. There are many levels of angels, and these are angels that are closest to humans. He will be transformed into a different person. He will understand with a knowledge different from what is previously known. He will rise above the level of the other wise men, even other wise men, because he has prophecy. As we find with the Navi Shmuel, the prophet, he said to Shaul, the Spirit of God will descend upon you, and you shall prophesy with them, and you will be transformed into a different person. Because now this person is in a different realm completely. Then he goes on to say there are a number of levels among the prophets. Just as with regard to wisdom, one sage could be greater than his colleague, so too with regard to prophecy, one prophet could be greater than another. What does that mean? How could one prophet be greater than another prophet? Either you know what's going on in the heavenly realm, or you don't know.
Is it about seeing potentials?
And therefore, where are the levels?
Like some people can, like theoretically, like I can see one potential, but then someone on a higher level can see multiple potentials and understand which one it's most likely to be.
So you're saying the other person could see things deeper.
Yeah, like they can see more, like there can be a prophet who maybe sees one option, and then there can be a prophet who understands even more than just the one potential.
Right. When you say potential, you mean potential of people.
Like potential of people, potential outcomes of what could happen and how they could influence the situation.
Okay, so that what you said is definitely true, but there's another aspect to it. A prophet is also a person that knows what's going on in the spiritual realm. So the question would be, if he knows, then he's a prophet. If he doesn't know, he's not a prophet. How could there be levels in that? So based on what you studied in Chassidus, you should know the answer, which is, don't be afraid to say. Up there are also levels, aren't there?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we know there are 4 worlds. And really, whoever learned a little bit more Chassidus knows that it's 4 worlds, but in each world there are infinite levels, higher and higher and higher. So therefore, when we say that a Navi, a prophet, sees what's going on in the spiritual realm, just like in wisdom, some understand things one way, and they don't get the full depth. Others understand it deeper and deeper, and there are levels. So too with the spiritual perception. There's some that see things that are in the lower world. Some see things where there are deeper. Just like there's deeper potential in a person, there's a deeper source in the spiritual realm. And one sees more and more and more than the other. So, I mean, one example of this we find in the Chumash. There's a story in the Chumash. It's called Parshas Korach. This is a person who's related to Moshe Rabbeinu. They were cousins. And he led a revolution against Moshe Rabbeinu because he felt that he should also have a position of authority, and he wasn't given that position. And he felt that Moshe took everything for his close relatives, his brother and his brother's children. And he led a revolution against Moshe Rabbeinu. And unfortunately, because of that, he and all the people that supported him had a downfall. But Rashi asks the question, this person wasn't an ordinary person. He was also a great person. In fact, he also had the ability to look and to see things in the future. Apparently, he had prophecy. How does someone like that come to fall so low? So Rashi says, because he looked into the future, and he saw that his descendants in the future will be great tzaddikim, and they'll be in the Beit HaMikdash. And he understood, if my descendants are going to be such great tzaddikim, obviously I'm not going to be the one to be defeated here. It'll be Moshe Rabbeinu, and I'll be the one who'll be victorious. In fact, in Tehillim, there are a lot of chapters of Tehillim that says this is the song of the children of Korach, meaning the descendants of Korach. But what happened was, where was his mistake? His mistake was that the punishment Hashem gave was that the earth opened up, and all the people that were supporting him and him, they were swallowed up by the earth. His children, in the last moment, did tshuva, and their life was saved. Get to you in a second. So Rashi says that he saw the future, but he didn't see the whole story. Moshe Rabbeinu saw the future, but he saw the whole story, that he's really going to go down and his children are going to be saved because they did tshuva. So we see clearly here there are 2 prophets. One saw so far. It's like looking at something with your eyes or looking at something with a telescope. Is there a difference? It's a whole different, you can see much, hundreds of thousands of miles away. That's how in prophecy there's also differences, how far you could see things. Yeah.
I have the same question that I had in detail. I don't remember what was it. How someone in that level of like kedusha can still have so much issues? Like how? My brain cannot, like I can't understand. How if you're that connected, you can still be so not connected.
That's it's a big subject. A lot of Maimorim in Chassidus, probably every Rebbe had a Maimor in Chassidus to explain that subject. But generally speaking, it also means that these people, the mistake that they made wasn't so, black and white the way we look at it. I mean, we're looking at it on a simple level. It was much deeper, but nevertheless, that deep little subtle mistake led to this kind of downfall. But it's a good question, very hard to understand. but this wouldn't be the place for it. Maybe when we do Parshas Korach, I'll explain it to you. No, you have it more. You have it in the desert with Moshe Rabbeinu, more things that came up. Okay, so there are levels in prophecy, just like there are levels in wisdom. So too, with regard to prophecy, one prophet is greater than the other. But they all have something in common. They receive prophetic visions only in a visionary dream or during the day after slumber has overtaken them. In other words, the prophet isn't sitting by the table and suddenly gets a prophecy. But look at the next paragraph. When any of them prophesy, their limbs tremble, their physical power become weak, they lose control of their senses, but their minds are free to comprehend what they see. Like it says by Abraham, a great dark dread fell over him, and then he fell asleep, and then he saw prophecy. Or Daniel, it says, my appearance was horribly changed, and I retained no strength. We know the story with Yaakov Avinu, where he saw the ladder, also he was sleeping. It doesn't mean sleeping like when we sleep. When we sleep, everything is blank. The screen is blank. When Yaakov sleeps, a prophet sleeps, it means in their sleep, that's when Hashem reveals to them these prophetic visions. Yeah.
So we have dreams though, so our minds aren't completely blank. So how are you able to tell the difference between dream and prophecy, especially at a time where so many people were prophets?
Obviously, a person who was at this high level would recognize whether he's having a dream, which is as a mishmash, in my head, or it's something godly that's appearing to him. They could tell the difference. It's not even a question. I couldn't tell you the difference because I only know one kind. I don't know the other kind. But those who are at that level knew the difference. And again, when it says that they were in a slumber, it means they were in a slumber, but their minds were super, super alert and super, super strong, meaning much more than during the daytime. Because the reason is because when a person is awake, the neshama is more connected to the body, and the body limits the neshama. So therefore, the capacity of the soul to see, to comprehend, and to perceive things is limited. So therefore, the way a Navi receives prophecy is by being unconscious to a certain extent. The body is sort of put out of commission. It's on off. And the soul is able to go out of that and now see and hear and experience things that are more spiritual.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And how did they receive a prophecy? For example, did I skip something? No, yeah, next page. When a prophet is informed of a message in a vision, it is granted to him in a metaphoric imagery. But then immediately the interpretation of the image is imprinted upon his heart and he knows its meaning. Hashem sends him an image, and with that he sends him a message how to interpret the image. For example, the ladder with the angels going up and going down by Yaakov Avinu was an allegory for the empires and the subjugation of his descendants. The ladder had 4 rungs, and each rung represented a different Geulah. This is Geulah of Mitzrayim, this is Geulah of Babylonian Geulah, this is the Roman Geulah, this is a different Geulah. So when Yaakov saw that ladder, he saw all the interpretations to the ladder. Similarly, the creatures Yecheskel saw. It says he saw a chariot, and the chariot had the face of an eagle, had the face of an ox, had the face of a lion, and this was not just animals. He's talking about a spiritual vision, but he saw what it meant spiritually. Or the boiling pot and the rod from an almond tree envisioned by Yirmiyahu. Or Yecheskel saw a scroll. The measure that was seen by Zechariah. These are all stories in the books of Tanakh, but they saw images, and with the images, Hashem gave them the interpretation. Similarly, some of the prophets would relay the allegory and its explanations. So when you look in the book of prophets, some places it says, like in Zechariah, it says that he saw a menorah. We just had it recently. We read it for Hanukkah. He saw a menorah with 7 branches, and then it said, and Hashem explained to him, this menorah represents the Jewish people. But in the book of the prophets itself, sometimes all you see is like by Yaakov, it just says there was a dream of a ladder and angels. It doesn't explain the dream. Rashi explains the dream. The Gemara explains the dream, but not in the Chumash. And the places where it just says the message, it doesn't tell us what the allegory was. It just says in the Torah, this prophet came and told the Jews, God told me to tell you this and this. But it doesn't tell us what was the image that they saw. Why it comes in an allegory, that's also explained in Chassidus a lot, but I don't want to take up time now. Others relate only the explanation, only the imagery. It can be seen in some of the prophecies of Yechezkel and Zechariah. So all the prophecies come in the form of metaphoric imagery and allegory. The only difference is some reveal to us the image and some don't. Some reveal the message and some don't. Okay, let's do one more piece. All the prophets do not prophesy whenever they desire. Instead, they must concentrate their attention, which means they're going to be thinking about spiritual things. They seclude themselves, and they have to be in a happy, is one listen. Also might be I'm putting my finger on the wrong part. Alarm. This is the alarm. Thank you. Okay. It means we have 5 minutes. Doesn't mean it's over. So here's a very interesting to know. This is very important to know. The next line, that a Navi, if he wants to receive prophecy, he has to be in a happy, joyous mood. Prophecy cannot rest on a person when he's sad. Only simcha. So remember, anyone in this room that wants to receive prophecy, there's a condition. You have to be b'simcha. Why am I saying it? Because what it shows us is that it doesn't mean only prophecy, it means Hashem's presence is found in a place where there's simcha. And the opposite of simcha is in other words, this is very much contrary to what many people think. Many people associate godliness and spirituality with the opposite. Very heavy, you're down, you're worried, you have anxiety about your punishments and what's going to be with my sins. And the heavier you are, if your nose is actually touching your toes, then you've got it made. You're really super spiritual. Here we see the opposite. The only thing that makes a person a vessel for Shechina, for spirituality, is simcha. Yeah.
Sorry, my voice is like gone, but didn't you say that Mordecai got the prophecy? He wasn't probably happy when he found out this decree.
At the moment that he found out the thing, of course he was, he's supposed to call out to Hashem and ask Hashem. But it was, by the way, it was the children that had the prophecy. They're the ones who said the prophetic message. But yes, when initially you hear something that hits you, and then you have to be the simcha with bitachon. Yeah.
They are engaged in negative prophecy, and during this prophecy, they also force themselves to be simcha.
No, it looks like they have to get the simcha before. If they're not the simcha, it wouldn't even begin to rest on them, this prophecy.
That shouldn't be be happy of any
Right. That was supposed. That's right. That was supposed to be happy. By the way, happy doesn't necessarily mean that to go around dancing, but it means to be that a person's in a upbeat mood and light and in a pleasant place, not sad and not depressed. These are things that don't allow Hashem's presence to dwell there. So if a person finds that learning or davening or these things make them down, I'm doing something wrong. I'm thinking about it the wrong way, because it's supposed to bring simcha and not the opposite. It's another discussion. It's a class in itself. Yeah.
Is it talking about like some happiness or like not I can be happy now and later fall on the street and be worried? Like real deep happiness that never goes away or some happiness?
Well, the truth
I
is,
don't know how to explain.
the truth is being human in a physical body on planet Earth, there's always reasons that to be happy is a challenge. We have to always sort of work on it.
Yeah, but that's some happy, not real.
No, the simcha has to come from a place that has depth to it, that has truth to it. It's not happy on making a good joke. I mean, if a person makes a good joke and everybody laughs, that's also a good thing, as long as you're laughing. But of course, it has to have more content to it. And the content is, the fact that everything is from Hashem and it's for a good purpose and so on. But definitely, this is one of the challenges. But here it says, in fact, it says that the next line says that if they wanted to receive a prophecy, they would call their students, tell them to play musical instruments to create an environment of simcha, and that brought the presence of Shekhinah into the room. Okay, we have one more piece I'd like to go into, where it talks about the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and all other prophets. Now, no prophet had the same level of prophecy like Moshe Rabbeinu. His was entirely at a different level. You see the difference. And then we'll go into discussing Moshiach prophecy. Yeah, so everybody, thank you for everything you did up until now. So we did reach a quarter of our goal, but a quarter is only a quarter, so we still have 3/4 to go. And hopefully you'll be able to continue, bring it to the happy ending. Okay.
Bye, everybody. For you. Yeah.